The night was clear. The sky was blanketed with stars, a kind you only see when you're far away from the city. In the middle of a quiet field, surrounded by trees, a campfire crackled. Flames licked the darkness, casting a warm orange glow across the faces of 3 generations. Grandpa Rufus sat on his trusted old log, one that had been around for years, wrapped in a thick wool blanket, holding an enamel mug of warm tea. Next to him sat his 2 grandchildren, 12-year-old Winston and his younger sister Jan, 9. They held their hands toward the flames, listening to the nighttime chorus of crickets, owls, and the occasional whisper of wind through the trees. "Well," Grandpa began, his voice as low and crackly as the fire. "Tonight, I want to tell you something, not just a story. A lesson, one I learned far too late." Jan tilted her head. "Is it about the old days, Grandpa?" "Yes," he said, slowly stirring his tea. "It's about when I was your dad's age, maybe even younger." He stared into the fire, as if he could see memories dancing in the flames, ones the kids couldn't see. "Back then, I believed happiness meant success, and success meant a big house, a car that turned heads, fancy shoes, and a ticking watch that could be heard from across the room." Winston frowned. "But that sounds kind of nice, having all that stuff." Grandpa nodded. "It is nice, I won't lie, but I was so focused on earning, on winning, on climbing the ladder, that I forgot why I was doing it in the first place." He poked a stick into the fire, nudging a log. The flames seemed to respond, flickering in agreement. "I worked 60, sometimes 70 hours a week, always available, always thinking ahead. Even when I was home, I wasn't really there. One day, your grandma looked at me and said, 'I miss you, even when you're sitting next to me.'" Jan pulled her knees to her chest. "What did you say?" I laughed. Grandpa sighed. Told her she was wrong, that I was doing it for her, for the family. But deep down, I knew she was right. A thoughtful silence followed. Not awkward, just real. Grandpa stood up and reached into a worn leather bag beside his chair. He pulled out an old yellowed photo album. "Here," he said, sitting back down. He flipped through the pages. Photos of birthdays, picnics, a younger version of himself with the same eyes. Grandpa as a young dad. One picture showed him jumping on a trampoline with Jill's father, both laughing. Another showed Grandma, hands covered in soil, smiling in the garden. I was there physically, but my mind, always in budgets, deadlines, the next promotion. You know what's strange?" The kids looked up. The neighbors, I was always trying to outdo. I barely knew them. I knew what car they drove, what color their house was, that they had a hot tub, but I didn't even know their names. "Why did you try to be better than them?" Winston asked softly. "Because I thought I had to," Grandpa said. "The world told me that's what mattered. More, bigger, faster, but never deeper." He closed the album gently and placed it beside him. "When your grandma got sick, something broke inside me, not just from grief, but from realization. She was the one who held the moments, the laughter, the heart of the home, and me, I was chasing numbers." Jan reached for his hand. He gave it a gentle squeeze. "And now," he continued, "now I'm older. My fancy watch is somewhere in a drawer, probably stopped ticking years ago. My car doesn't impress anyone. But you two, you impress me. Every time I see you, I know what I should have chosen." "What's that?" Winston asked. Grandpa looked at them, his eyes lit by the fire. Not just its glow, but something deeper. "Time, presence, attention. All the things you can't buy, but are worth the most." The wind danced through the trees. The fire carried the scent of pine and warm earth. Grandpa stood up and walked to a small wooden box by his seat. From it, he took out an old wooden harmonica, dusty but intact. "This was from my father. Never really learned to play, never had the time, you know. But these days, I give it a go." He played a few soft notes, no familiar tune, but a sound that belonged to the night. Calm, gentle, honest. "Can I try it?" Winston asked, eyes wide. "Of course," Grandpa smiled, "but only if you promise to pick it up more often than I ever did." Winston nodded and carefully took the harmonica. Noor smiled proudly at him. "Maybe we can practice together. We have music class at school." Grandpa chuckled. "Now that is wealth." He sat back down, this time without his tea. Just him, the fire, the children, and the stars above. "Kids," he said softly, "someday when you're older, the world will try to convince you that your worth is measured in money, success, and control. But trust me." He leaned in, his voice steady and true. "The most beautiful parts of life happen when you let go. When you listen to a child's story about a drawing. When you go for a walk without a goal. When you create something, or share something, or simply exist." Noor yawned, but didn't look away. "And Grandpa," she whispered, "do you think we'll remember this when we grow up?" Grandpa leaned over and tapped her forehead gently. "If you keep it here, and here," he pointed to her chest, "you'll never forget." And there, under the stars, with the fire as witness, a story was passed down. Not a fairy tale, but perhaps the most important truth of all.